It's like a reunion. I think I know half of you. Nice to see you. So yeah, I'm Keith with the Maritime Museum in Beaufort and right across the harbor there. I'm going to tell you a little story about a whale that we're re-articulating to make a skeletal display. Any questions or comments, don't raise your hand, just blurt it out, and we'll see how this goes. There we go. I work with a bunch of folks. We call ourselves a Marine Mammal Stranding Network. These are the institutions, and I was with people from all these institutions an hour ago in Core Sound. We just euthanized and necropsied that humpback whale that's been beaten to death nearly in Core Sound. So that's what we just got off the boat from that. After the talk, you want to hear an update about that, I'd love to tell you about it. That's what we were doing. And we, particularly my wife, Vicki Thayer, gets all the calls of dead or dying or entangled marine mammal in central North Carolina. We have collaborators north of us and south of us who we can also work with. They cover those areas. So marine mammals, around here we do get now 4 species of seals. 10 years ago I would have told you we just have harbor seals. Occasionally we get a manatee. As I speak, there's a live harbor porpoise on the beach in Dare County. And North Carolina's interesting, we get quite a variety. But our first challenge is to try to figure out if the report is accurate. Is it really a marine mammal on the beach? And anyway, I'll go through that. So in the next 20-25 minutes, I'm going to cover all these aspects of this little project we're doing in the woods in Beaufort. Just to orient you, this is approximately all the species of whales, dolphins, and porpoises globally. A lot of people like to argue what's a species and what isn't, but for this purpose, I'm only going to be talking about the largest toothed whale, the sperm whale. A little bit of information about sperm whales. They're in all oceans of the world. The females and the young are restricted to the temperate latitudes. And then the adult males tend to venture toward the poles and then come back probably to mate, or they may become more loners. But in North Carolina, which is right on the edge there, we do see neonates, we do see adult males and females. So we're right on the edge. This is a mom sperm whale with her newborn neonate. Could barely swim, seemed healthy enough, possibly hours old, I don't think weeks old. And just a couple quick facts about them. They have a very, what we call slow reproductive rate. They just don't produce very many young. They invest a whole lot in each young. They reach sexual maturity at about 19 years, depending on the gender. Long gestation period. All that boils down to, if you kill hundreds of thousands of them, they're going to recover very slowly if you can detect the recovery at all. That's kind of the stage we're in, I think, right now with sperm whales. So I was on a research boat, and we saw this nursery group of sperm whales and a newborn, and all the fishermen said, "Oh, let's catch some squid." And I said, "How are you going to catch squid?" They said, "Oh, everyone knows if you go fishing near a nursery group of sperm whales, you're going to catch squid." Well, I didn't know that. I read it in books, but okay, long reproductive rates. Okay, so this holds the record, and it's not the sperm whales of the orangutans for a slow reproductive rate. Birth interval of 8 to 10 years. Yeah. So anyway, we went fishing, and what did we catch? Dozens of these squid, which is a large squid to me, but to a sperm whale is probably a small one. That is the hard part of the squid, the beak. I'm going to talk about squid beaks in a minute, but that is the size of a squid beak from the squid my friend is holding there. The squid beaks in our whale that I'm going to tell you about was about a third that size, and I have to learn about if the size of the beak relates to the size of the squid, because I want to find out what our whale was eating. And just a tidbit about whaling. For a little more than a century, we were probably killing sperm whales at what some people might consider a sustainable rate. Small boats, catching a few, subsistence whaling, using the oil, maybe using the blubber and the meat. But when exploding harpoons, factory-shaped multi-year cruises started decimating sperm whales, the catch increased to the point where in many oceans of the world, they became economically extinct. The boats had to travel further. The life was, lucrative if you're lucky, speculative in all cases, and eventually it just wasn't worth hunting because oil was discovered in Pennsylvania, and it got very rare. Then there was a moratorium on whaling, and in this country at least, there's no more sperm whaling. But in the North Atlantic Ocean, there actually is. And St. Lucia legally hunts sperm whales every year. They have the biggest nose on Earth, and they can't smell a thing. And people love to argue, what the heck is going on? What the whalers were after was the very valuable oil. This is what was so lucrative. Whales were hunted for a lot of products, but this was the valuable stuff, spermaceti, from the head of a sperm whale. There's a lot of plumbing in there, blood vessels, air tubes, a lot of speculation of what the heck does that whale use that huge oil reservoir for? I've never seen this stuff before, and I dug my knife in, I got a bunch of it, and I welcome you all to smell this and touch it if you want to. Lubrication was its strength. This is what this was coveted for. They would not, the whalers and the people who depend on this product would not waste this on lighting or heating. Lighting a little bit, not heating. The blubber oil, what they're after, that was lesser quality. This is lubrication, plant food, cosmetics, rust proofing, a lot of uses for this oil. And we do get large males. Actually, this is one that stranded in 1928. You got the Marine Mammal Stranding Network standing there. I'm just kidding. It's interesting to have a large male come ashore in North Carolina. I guess I haven't seen one that big in North Carolina ever. The bones were collected. All the teeth and the lower jaws, a lot of them were lost. The Museum of Natural Sciences in Raleigh put this beast together. It's called Trouble. That's what they named it. And it's on display now. But the person who articulated these bones, his name's Paul Nader, who works with us, he said the skull was so damaged he's positive it was hit by an exploding harpoon. And he thinks that this whale survived a whaling attack that died soon afterwards and washed ashore. Although we do know whaling in this country for sperm whales, we are still managing to kill them, and many of you know a lot about entanglement cases, ingestion of trash in this sperm whale, and most sperm whales that come ashore in North Carolina, they didn't have food in their stomach, they didn't have mother's milk, they had ropes and life jackets and milk jugs and unidentifiable pieces of our trash. And that's in the case of this sperm whale that washed ashore on the west coast. This one looks like it survived a series of pellet strikes, and they look fairly well healed as a sperm whale. So those are entanglement, ingestion of our trash, and ship strikes. Clearly, that humpback that we euthanized today in Core Sound, the smoking gun, I think everyone agrees, was a ship strike. It had very deep cuts in its back. That will leave it. So, I'm going to bring it on home. What's that? Paris, very good. You get an A. I'm going to blow up that bottom point, which is Cape Lookout, and take you in an airplane, and we're looking northish. So this is the west end of Harper's Island. Beaufort's there. Back Sound, Cape Lookout Bight, Atlantic Ocean. So that's where we got a call of a live sperm whale on the beach on a very cold January day. By the time we got there, it was fresh dead. Now, sometimes they're not really marine mammals. And in February, occasionally we got a call of a dead whale off on the beach. It turned out to be a Christmas tree because people love to throw the Christmas trees in the sand dunes, and the storm washes them out. The fisherman sees this bump on the beach, calls it as a whale. We get out there, and it wasn't. But we get calls about turtles and sharks and lots of other things. This was an easy one. Sperm whales. Tremendous blockhead. only erupted teeth in the lower jaw. All other whales and dolphins have a blowhole further back on the head. Sperm whales are unique in that their blowholes forward. The pectoral fin is going to be an important part of this story. And one of my priorities was to get the teeth out before they were stolen, because I wanted to be able to show people the teeth, but I also wanted to... What can you learn from a toothed whale's tooth? Age. You get an A. I'm giving out A's here. Let's see another picture of the sperm whale. So this is not the brain. This is not the cranium. That bump is the oil reservoir. The spermaceti organ or the melon. I think everyone agrees it has a lot to do with sound manipulation, particularly sound production. It's got an air sac here, it's got lots of air plumbing, and the schematics I've seen, they suck in air, make a sound here, and it bounces off a big parabola of the skull, which I'll show you in a second. But there's gallons and gallons of this stuff. At least 20 gallons in this whale, probably 100 or more in a large adult male. It has a unique property where if I hold it in my hand 10 minutes, it will turn to liquid. It will pour like regular cooking oil. But unlike beeswax, I mean, it has a unique melting point. That probably has survival value for a sperm whale. A lot of this is theoretical, but one of the neatest theories is that it can actually use this, perhaps, to assist with its deep dives or its ascent. If this gets hard and more dense, perhaps it lets the whale go down more easily. Suppose the whale is down in very cold water, and this is hard and dense, and it can shunt warm blood or warm air around this organ, turn it into a liquid. Could that possibly give it some buoyancy and help it come to the surface more easily? And you got any thoughts about that? That's just a theory. But it has a unique melting point. Another picture, good look at the blowhole of this whale. So we're taking out the teeth. And you're welcome to come up and handle this after the talk if you want, but this is a tooth, fresh dead on the beach. And this is a tooth that was buried with the whale for 4 years. The gum line is right there. The rest was under the gum. You can see just a little bit of sticking out. It has sockets in the upper jaw. This one's my pride and joy. This one I cut and polished the edge and soaked it in formic acid that you gave me, whether you know it or not. Thank you very much. And then stained it with Indian ink, but I found a Sharpie pen works just as well. And you can see lines, and each line corresponds with 1 year of growth. There's the tooth. So, a friend of mine has this fancy saw that'll cut a 200 micron thin section of tooth. And I put on a light table and photograph it with cross-polarized light, and the lines show up absolutely beautifully. And so we could determine that this 33.5-foot male sperm whale was very close to 15 years old when it washed ashore alive at Cape Brook. How cool is that? Necropsy. My friend Bruce is cutting off the pectoral fin. That'll be an important part of the story. Gives you the idea of blubber thickness. Paul's taking the rib apart so they can get to the stomach contents and some of the other organs. I was very excited. I had just found the spermaceti organ. So there it is flowing out. I wasn't ready for it. It filled my boots. It floated in the sand. And as soon as, this is fresh dead whale, still warm, but as soon as it hit that cold Cape Lookout air, it turned into white wax. What does it smell like? Thanks for asking. Step right up. You can be the first one to smell it. That's been frozen for most of the last 6 years, and I take a little bit out to share it. So I really recommend. Oh, he's been in chemistry class. He knows how it smells. Yes. about this. I love the smell. I keep it on my desk. I watch it turn to liquid and solid. Pretty cool stuff. Anyway, so I called the volunteers. I said, oh, get some buckets. So I collected about 3 gallons of it. And that's it in buckets. Yes, Joe's very adventurous. And if you're used to handling loot, look at him go. Stay away from him downtown tonight. It will, can you feel something special about it? I don't know. Some people... another person. Yeah, that's right. Anyway, I've read and heard that our sense of smell is very strongly linked to our emotions. If, as an adult, we smell something that reminds us of our grandmother's kitchen, we get goosebumps and we're just transported there. I've had 2 people come in to where we're putting the whale together and smell that. So use your imagination. Where did that transport them? Yeah, it'd be hard to get it out. 2 separate people, they said, oh my gosh, it's my grandfather's auto mechanic shop. That smell probably impregnated every piece of wood and every piece of clothing because that was the original transmission fluid in Rolls Royces. That was brake fluid. And lubricant and lighting, and especially lubricant. So that was the stuff. And originally it was for lighting. Now, an artist friend of mine made a little candle. She thinks there's something special about the light. Maybe you artists in here might see that too. I don't know. But, more uses than I can list. Just to give you an idea of some of the uses, not of whale oil rendered from blubber, but spermaceti oil from the head of the sperm whales. And these are products that only a couple of us in this room might even remember these for sale once upon a time, but all of these products were based on spermaceti or sperm whale oil. Stomach contents. So this is pretty much the entire stomach contents, and it was exciting to me because in a necropsy we tried to determine the cause of death, and we ruled out entanglement. We ruled out ship strike. And when it came time to looking in the stomach, and I cut every inch of that intestine, I expected another case of another sperm whale ingesting our trash. And we found one little candy wrapper or wrapper that we don't attribute to its death. Nothing but squid beaks and parasitic worms that we pretty much find in every stomach of a large whale. And these are the squid beaks. Just an example of them down here that we found. So that was interesting. Cause of death, still a mystery.
Yeah, that's like ascaris, roundworm. Those little worms.
ASK?
ASCARIS.
Thanks. I want to know what it is, actually. I might bring you or someone a sample. I would like to know. Nematodes is what people describe as an asterisk. Is it a nematode? No, it's not? Something different? Okay, I have a lot to learn. Okay, it's kind of gross, but if you follow your neck all the way up to the very top bone, and if you push on your right side, that bone sticks out the left. Which the left side, it sticks out the right. We have a small U-shaped hyoid bone. Yeah, it's there. Okay, but this is a hyoid bone, or the hyoid apparatus in our sperm whale. And it's actually made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bones. Now, I'm going to get back. I'm going to show you a quick picture of that later. Fresh out of the still warm whale. During the necropsy, lunchtime. And at some point during this process, someone had the crazy idea that Beaufort should have his whale skeleton. And someone had the crazier idea that he should do it. Well, I don't have much experience or passion for this. I didn't think I could do it. But we decided, okay, let's have the option. So we decided to bury the whale. Well, the Park Service loaned us a 4-wheel drive backhoe. It's a monstrous machine. It couldn't tow the whale. So we cut off literally tons of flesh off the head and the body and hooked it up again. We couldn't tow the whale. So we had to cut the head apart from the body. We couldn't tow the head, and we couldn't tow the body. So we had to put the stabilizers down, extend the bucket, bring it to us, move, put the stabilizers down. I mean, it was a multi-day process to get this whale into a grave. Meanwhile, and I had conceived of putting a whale skeleton together before. There was a fin whale at Cape Lookout. Did the necropsy Saturday. By Tuesday, people had already stolen the ribs and the vertebrae, and I got depressed and I gave up on the project. So we put up ropes and a sign, trying to encourage people and even threaten people not to touch it, and it worked. So no one messed with it. And when we finally lightened it up enough, separated the body from the head, wondering what the hell to do now, borrowed a backhoe, dug a grave, put the body in, hooked up the head, put the head in, and now we're dumping the body into the grave. When I bury a dolphin, after about 2 years, it's reduced to stinky bones. I want this to be reduced to stinky bones. We checked it every year. About 3 years, we went to the grave, vehicle, trailer, a bunch of volunteers, digging down. Oh, it's getting stinky. They're putting on their masks. So we went to the grave. Okay. This is cool. This was going to be a cool exhibit. I didn't want to lose any little bones. So any place on the body where I thought there were little bones, like the phalanges, fingertips, the phalanges, or the last vertebra, or the skull, we wrapped that part of the body in hardware cloth and buried it. And so what they're doing is pulling the flipper out of the grave. It's been in the grave 3 years. I forgot to say about the other flipper. When we're doing the necropsy, this guy next to me says, "Keith, if you're going to put this whale together, can I cut off the flipper and freeze it?" And I said, "Well, I really don't plan to put this whale together. And hi, I'm Keith. What's your name?" And his name happened to be Paul Nader. And we put together 11 whale skeletons and that are on display somewhere on this earth. He said, "I've never been able to know if I've got the flippers right because we've never been able to x-ray a whale flipper." So he cut off one flipper, stored it in Raleigh in a freezer for 4 years, and then finally x-rayed it. This is the flipper that we buried. I didn't know how flippers go together, but I had an idea. I know that they have the same humerus, radius, ulna, and some combination of 5 digits. But anyway, we just trying to photograph everything, make sure we had everything out of the grave. Didn't lose any little bones, and some of the bones are really little. And on that day, we got the scapula, or shoulder blades, very fragile, such a huge beast. The bones are fragile. Ribs, flipper, atlas, sternum. I showed you the hyoid bones out of a fresh, dead, warm whale. 3 years in the grave, very stinky, but exactly what I hoped for. Or the tail vertebrae. The skull wasn't ready, so I went back a year later. More equipment, more people. We're going after the skull. We found it. Exposed it. So it was lying on its right side, so we got all the left teeth out. When it was on the beach, the right teeth we left in the grave. The spermaceti organ was right here. Blowhole sat right about here. The brain back here. The eye orbit right about there. No, right there. Lift the skull off the lower jaw bones. And these pictures are really valuable to me now because these bones actually fell off, and so now I have to look at this picture to see exactly how to put them back. I couldn't even tell they were separate bones when we pulled out of the grave. And I mentioned the big parabola on the back of the skull. I also mentioned how fragile the bones were. Most of the skull, or a lot of it, was broken. But just with paintbrushes and sieves and screen, we saved every little bone and put it in buckets. And some of my volunteers enjoyed jigsaw puzzles, and they really put these back together. Did a magnificent job. Everything went wrong that day. We brought a trailer, put the skull on it. The trailer broke. Had to go get another trailer, put the skull on it on a mattress. Donated Mitsubishi 4-wheel drive. The 4-wheel drive went out. So the backhoe had to tow the Mitsubishi, had to tow the trailer. Meanwhile, the whole gale started blowing up, and I didn't look out bite. This is sheltered water, and its white caps were eventually breaking over the dock. I borrowed a Park Service boat with a crane. We lifted the whole mess onto the crane, brought it back to the museum's property over here in Beaufort, dug a pond, lined it with pond liner, put the skull in, filled it with water, literally went to the horse it in, filled the rest with water, a process called maceration. We couldn't get all the flesh out of the little crevices. I didn't want to power wash it. Dermisted beetles in an enclosed habitat would have been ideal, but we're using bacteria in the gut of horses, or their poop actually clean those bones, and it works. Meanwhile, someone advised me, Keith, don't put the original teeth in your final display. Why not? Because people will try to steal them. I didn't believe it. But I went to the vet school a couple of years ago, and someone reached over and grabbed a tooth, but they got a handful of plaster because they had fake teeth in that sperm whale display. But this year I went up to Harvard, or last summer I went to Harvard to look at their sperm whale display, and someone had stolen 2 front teeth. They had original teeth in there. So I think I'm going to put fake teeth in. How we do it? Actually, that's a fake tooth right there. No one will ever tell. We make a mold of every tooth. One of those red Solo cups that you all know is for beer pong. And then it's a silicone mold that gets hard. Then we pour 2-part casting resin in the mold and wait 10 minutes, and then we yank on that casting resin, which is hardened, and it turned into a tooth replica. And these are some students who offered to do that. And that's our final class project, which is fabulous because these are the 2 teeth that are going to go to the final display. I might put some real teeth in, but I haven't decided yet. All the bones minus the skull laid out. We weighed and measured every bone. Oh, the adventures of a pectoral fin. So my friend Paul cut the fin off, froze it. Just before he x-rayed it, he put it on a piece of cardboard and traced it. And this is the x-ray. Never been done before, but it enables us to build an accurate flipper, which I'm excited about. Most people are surprised at the orientation and the amount of the similarity between humans. Bottlenose dolphins also. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 digits in there. There's a human arm, an adolescent. And it's interesting because this is an adolescent whale. 15 years as an adolescent for a sperm whale. And the growth plates, barely see a line there, and that's the articulation with the humerus, but the growth plates are not attached. Joe and I, and you, maybe that's it, our growth plates are fast attached to our bones. Maybe some of you all, most of you are probably still growing a little bit, I don't know. As we age, they fuse to our bones. But this is an adolescent human, and these growth plates are not fused to the bone. So that's a cool comparison, I think. The bones from the x-ray, right flipper, the bones exhumed out of the grave, left flipper. And guess what we learned? That sperm whales are very asymmetrical. Not only is the right flipper bigger, every bone weighs more, and it has more bones. This has more bones than that. So what would you suspect? You suspect that Keith probably just lost some bones. Well, I took so much effort to make sure I didn't lose any bones so I could answer this question. But we really think they're asymmetrical. Their behavior is asymmetrical, I'm learning. And other whales' behavior is asymmetrical. So their hard anatomy would probably or likely reflect that, certainly in some cases. Every right rib of our sperm whale is bigger than the corresponding left rib. Why?
Are some sperm whales left flippered and some right flippered?
Southern hemisphere. No, I'm just kidding. I really don't know. That's a great question. If we look into this more, we might. Bottlenose dolphins are known as strand feed. On their left side or the right side, remember? I think it's the right side. I mean, if I ever showed a picture of a bottlenose dolphin strand feeding on its left side, someone would say you put the slide in backwards because it's always on the right side. Fin whales, when they feed, they only circle one way. I forget which way it is. But, so there's a lot of asymmetry in their behavior, and you would expect, an anatomist would expect that the hard anatomy would reflect that. Just the muscle tone would be different. It would pull the bones different ways. I don't know if they're a left flipper sperm whales. All right. I don't know why, but these people are just nuts about the sperm whale flipper. And this guy is at the Toshiba Imaging Lab at Kenyapak University. I don't know how to pronounce it. they were excited to get this flipper to do an MRI. If they charged us for it, it would be $20,000, and they want to donate it just to have bragging rights to have done this. I said, why do you want to spend all this money donating this to us? And the guy said, every day, all day, what we do MRIs on are dead toddler humans. Trying to figure out, was it strangulation, suffocation, blunt trauma, just unbelievable. So that they could contribute to something that's more on the cutting edge and it excited them, so they want to do that. In fact, so I mentioned the core sound today, humpback whale. Finished the net crop scene. We had a little time left. I had this crazy idea, let's cut off the flipper. So we brought a 7.5-foot humpback flipper left, and my friend called them up, and they said, yes, we will do your humpback flipper for no cost. So that's what we're working on. Anyway, I don't know what all this means. This is the image from the MRI. What's cool about an MRI, which some of you may have had it before, no more than I do, is that you can look at the bone, but you can peel, like you look at the skin, peel it back, look at the blubber, peel it back, look at the tendons, the ligaments in the bone, and see how things are connected. And so they're very excited about doing that with a whale. So I had bones in storage. They're really stinky, but I had no place to put them. I rented a storage place at a little place that I better not say where it was, and they were stinking. And all that stuff that you learn about in college, at least I learned about in college, to mask scent. Not in chemistry class, but like in the dorm room. Well, I found out what all those were again, and they still work. And twice a week I'll go to disinfect that storage place. And my incredible volunteers not only donated the land, but raised the money, and in 7 days built what we call Bonehenge. So I'm just going to go through this quickly. Day 1, day 2, day 3. That woman right there is one of them. Day 4, my roofing divas. That might be still day 4 or 5. Day 6, putting the final coat of paint on. Day 7, pouring the concrete. Last day, hanging the barn door. In every way, this is custom made to do nothing but put together a 33.5-foot sperm whale skeleton. Strengthened center beam with chain and hoist down the center, big barn door so we can get the beast out, and we're through with it. I paid the vet school at NC State in Raleigh $8,000 to degrease every bone. So all the bones went to the vet school. This is a vapor phase degreaser. I'm not sure. It's a really nasty chemical called trichloroethylene, and it just gets the grease out of the bones. And that's important, especially for a sperm whale, because they're very greasy. We have a small museum, and not everyone is enthusiastic, as I am about a whale skeleton. So I can't install a stinking, greasy whale skeleton there. So we went through this effort, and then the bones came back to the degreaser, soaked them for 6 days in household strength hydrogen peroxide. That further dissolves protein, kills bacteria, lightens the color a little bit. And then, maybe because of all the treatment, maybe just because they're so darn fragile, I couldn't really pass these bones around or touch them because my fingers would get chalky. And literally bone tissue was coming off. And I know this has been a problem with other skeletons, so we got this stuff. Never been done before. Hope it was the right thing to do. It's called J403. Librarians love it as bookbinder's glue. And we painted all the bones with this bookbinder's glue. Diluted. The first coat is sucked in, and the second coat seems to stay more on the surface. I hope that was the right thing. I'll tell you in 100 years. This guy is incredible. He thought the flipper was so cool that he wanted to replicate every bone out of a flipper. And John Russell is in Pine Hill Shore. So we made a mold of each flipper bone, pull the original bone out of the mold, put the mold back together, and pour casting resin in, and the result was a fabulous replica. And so we had the x-ray, and he knew he could put these together, and I'm going to show you this because I'm so proud of him and the result of it, but this is nothing but painted plastic. But it looks terrifically real. So not only will we be able to rebuild these flippers more accurate than has ever been done before, not bragging, whoever does it after me will do a better job, I'm sure, but at least we can correct some errors that people have used. And then this is the tracing of the actual flipper, which You know, it took a little extra effort, but I'm just so pleased to be able to have that because when this display is up, no one will be able to touch anything. But this will be something that people can actually handle. But it's even crazier. He thought that was so cool that he made a second set, and we keep them in a bucket. And we just spill them onto the carpet, and people can build a flipper. I don't know, look at the X-ray or this. Anyway, so that's what we do when we get silly. Oh my gosh, was this a mystery? It still is. So nearly every whale or dolphin we dissect has pelvic bone. Some remnant of femurs or pelvic bones, and we only find a pair in bottlenose dolphins. We never find them in pygmy sperm whales. I don't know much about them, but I wanted to make sure I found it. So, in the pelvic region of this, between the tail and the abdomen, we found these 3 bones. And I was just too excited because I've never found 3 pelvic bones in a whale before. But some people said they had. I didn't believe them. So that was cool. And I sent this picture to a guy named Hans who studies whale evolution. And he said, "No, Keith, you found a pelvic bone in 2 femurs." And I thought, wow, that's cool. And he said, "Well, what happened to your other pelvic bone?" No, I couldn't have missed anything. It wasn't there. This is a big bone. I didn't lose a bone that size. He said, "Okay, but you got the femurs and you missed that one? I don't really know how you could have done that." And so I was feeling like, okay, inadequate Keith, didn't really do it right. I sent this picture up to a guy in Woods Hole. He has a website, cetaceanpelvicbones.org. I mean, come on. This guy makes me look normal. And he said, "No, Keith, consider that these might be floating ribs and not pelvic bones, not the femurs." And so the mystery lingers. I think he's right. We're going to have to sort this out. We are one now, but still, the mystery is what happened to the other pelvic bone. And I pose this question to anyone who knows whale anatomy. And this is what I think happened. I told you it's an asymmetrical whale. Everything on the right side is bigger than the left side. And if these are floating ribs, which I believe they are, there's some of them out on the right side, floating ribs, not attached to the sternum, not close to the vertebrae, it's not floating. Some humans have them. The smaller one will be the left one. So now we're thinking this was the right pelvic bone, a young individual, all the bones hadn't ossified yet, and the left pelvic bone was still cartilage. Crazy idea? Maybe. I don't know. But this guy, David Taylor Woods Hole, showed me a series of pelvic bones from humpback whales of different ages, and how one side was cartilage and the other side was bone. These were dissected out of the fresh dead whales. So that's what I'm thinking happened. And I'll probably mount a right pelvic bone, nothing on the left side. Visitors are going to scratch their head and say, "Well, they screwed up," and we're going to have a little display just describing asymmetry. So,
what about it being a prepubescent vacuum?
someone mentioned that. And I don't know if sperm whales have a vacuum. So I think that was, great question. Someone discussed that this could be. Yeah. Everyone agrees it's a pelvic bone. It looks much like every other cetacean pelvic bone. I know pinnipeds have vacuums, and I don't know.
I knew that.
And I don't. Our bottlenose dolphins don't. I don't think sperm whales do either. Great question. And in the process of all this thing, there's been some fascinating research I'm not going to get into, but this is a little thing that the Smithsonian published about whale evolution and how you can find predictable developmental stages in whale fossils in known age sediments. In very unlikely places to me on this earth, some of you, this might be predictable, the Egyptian desert and sites in India and Pakistan, which were once part of ocean where it was believed that whales evolved. You will never find whale fossils at this stage of development in coastal North Carolina. This is where they believe that land mammals evolved into whales in that region. I don't know a whole lot about it, but it's interesting that there's, in the last 20 years, probably the best fossil record of evolution in any line is cetaceans, discovered by a few people in these areas. Like there. What do you find? Like that. And a lot of people visit Bonehenge. I mentioned today, if any of you want to take a ride, ride down the road 10 minutes, I'll gladly give you a quick tour. But this is the building we built. An artist wanted to make a contribution, and she did this stylized sperm whale. The skull was too big for the degreaser, so we built a jacuzzi. And for 6 months, soaked it in there with ammonia and Dawn dish soap to get the grease out of the skull bones. We're weighing it. The entire skull, minus the lower jaws, 24 pounds. Built a rack, so we're taking the bones off the rack, and every bone needs personal attention. And not only that, every space between the bones needs personal attention. And every other whale display, if they put anything between the discs, it's using caulk. And all the space between the discs are the same. Well, we're learning from dissections that that's not the real whale. In the thoracic section, where they don't bend much, there's very little space, and near the tail there's very big space. So we're trying to replicate that in our display. Everything's being mounted on a steel pipe, and a welder is working very closely with me to custom-made rib hangers that hide the steel as much as possible, but gives it plenty of structural support. I have a terrific model to go by at the vet school in Raleigh. Anatomically, it might be the gold standard. As a display, one thing they did is they let bone support bone, and it's literally falling apart. So they advised me, you got to use more steel. Alright, sperm whales are, I can't think of another mammal that's more sexually dimorphic. Maybe there's not even another animal, possibly some insects. Males grow twice as big as females. And our whale, were a female at 33.5 feet, it would be an old girl. It would be an old lady. Being a male at 33.5 feet, it was a youngster, an adolescent. This one was a female. I showed you the tooth count of our whale. This is a tooth from this female, same size as ours. Ours had 15 lines, and this one had 42. So I thought that was cool. I'm working on ways of how we're going to support it, and this is one concept that I have. I have to give the engineers a weight distribution so that they can all approve innocent students walking underneath this 1,000-pound display. Or not so innocent students, who knows? I had to come up with a budget. I don't care if you read the words and the numbers, but this is my budget, and I'm pretty much spot on, a little under budget if anything, and the total is about $50,000. The museum is allowing this to do this, me to do this on museum time, so it doesn't include my salary, but I paid $8,000 for the degreaser, I'm paying the welder $6,000. I have to buy a lot of materials and services. So just to give you an idea, any project like this, if you're not thinking about the budget, you might not be able to do it. So, one reason I did this is because this volunteer wanted to take fundraising away from Keith. And I hate fundraising, I'm no good at it. And what he did was took every bone, told me to write down how many of each bone. He asked me to assign a value to them. And we're going to sell bones. We can't sell bones to endangered species. He said, no, Keith, people will just have their name associated with the bone and really get nothing. I said, yeah, right. Well, the first bone to go was a $5,000 cranium. Who'd believe that? The next bones to go were all the $25 phalanges. These things. And we're half. We raised about $27,000. I spent $26,000, and people are still doing it. I'm not hustling you. It's just a creative fundraiser that's working. That's a shock to me. And more volunteers I can possibly list. This is an old list, but anyway, this is a big project, and I'm not very talented, so I need a lot of help. And all these people have been very helpful, including just about every marine-related institution regionally that you might list have been extremely helpful in this project. And I'm putting together a sperm whale, and a friend of mine leads whale watches in the Sierra Cortez, and this is what he sees. And this is a nursery group of sperm whales. It's the best picture I've ever seen. So this is a dorsal fin or dorsal hump of one, another dorsal hump of another. This is a pectoral fin. There's a blowhole. very asymmetrical. The blowhole clearly off to the left, and their spout is off to the left too. Right under his boat in that clear sea Cortez water. That's the eye right there, pectoral fin. Just make sure you're oriented. There's another one.
One of the start spots on the preceding one.
Let me see.
Right. Yeah, way at the top there.
Big shadows.
Yeah, but that looks like tooth rake marks.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it looks like bumps of dung up there.
What?
Yeah.
No, they're bubbles and shadows.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's it. Oh, I use these pictures because I want, every other whale skeleton I've seen pretty much is just straight. I want this to twist and turn and kick. I want to walk in the museum and have this open sperm whale mouth menacing right towards you. And so I'm looking at these to see what's possible in a wild sperm whale. Blowholes there, that's the back of the skull right there. The head is about a third the body length of these beasts. And youngsters swimming over his boat. How crazy is that? And there's been a lot of press about sperm whales lately. I think one of the most thoughtful articles is the New York Times made the connection of humans' pursuit for oil. And in the whaling days, destroyed wildlife, endangered humans in the pursuit of oil. And the BP Gulf spill happened. They said, oh wow, what a coincidence, pursuit of oil, killing humans, destroying wildlife. And it's a pretty cool connection in this article I wrote. And people are looking very carefully at sperm whales dying in the Gulf and seeing how it could relate to the oil spill or the use of underwater acoustics for a variety of things. And this is one sperm whale came ashore dead soon after the oil spill. And another one. And just some of the graphics that we created for the website. I have a few brochures if any of you will want to learn more about the project. And the website is bonehenge.org. And that's it. So, thanks for your questions. Some good questions and your interest. So if you want to unhandle real teeth, I'd love you to. And, but if you don't, that's okay. You might feel totally hurt. But anyway, they're here. And I don't know if you have a sign-up sheet or if anyone wants to. My feelings will be hurt if no one wants to get one. It's about a 10-minute drive down a single-lane road into the woods in Beaufort, and that's where we have the building where we're doing the work. So if any of you want to go for a ride, I would urge you to take as few cars as possible because it's a one-lane road.